In this example, we're going to see how to use the JavaScript SDK to prompt the user for extended permissions and retrieve the user's email address. We'll be adapting the JavaScript app already created, and we'll start off with the index_js PHP file we saved at the end of the basic JavaScript example, or you can copy the index_js.php file from the project files to use as your starting point for this app. The changes we'll need to make are a prompt for the extra permissions that we need, and then to retrieve and display the email address for the user. So let's take a look at what we need to add into our code to do that. In our file, if we move down to the bottom of the prompt Facebook login function, and just before the closing bracket of that function, we specify some arguments for scope. The first parameter passed through to the FB login function is the function which will deal with the response of FB login. The second parameter we're passing in is a definition of the permissions required by defining the scope variable. As in the PHP example, scope is used to tell the OAuth2 authorization process that we are asking the user to grant extra permissions. The extra permissions we're asking for are publish, stream, and email, specified in exactly the same way as in the PHP SDK example, and we can expect that as a result, the Graph API Me function will now also return the user's email address. Given that we're expecting that, let's just go and add the code to show the user's email address from the response object. Now that we're requesting extended permissions, we'll just change the text of our alert just to give a little bit more information to the user should they not grant the extended permissions necessary. Okay, let's save our changes. Let's go over to Facebook. I already have the app loaded. Let's just reload it. Click the login button, and you'll notice that the JavaScript SDK realizes that we're asking for more permissions and prompts the user automatically to grant those permissions. This is a nice little feature of the JavaScript SDK, and one which makes it arguably better for login and automatic prompting for permissions than the PHP SDK. If we allow the app, we'll then see that the email address is returned and all is as expected. The fact that the JavaScript SDK detected that we now need more permissions from the user and automatically prompted for those permissions is a nice bonus that we get with the JavaScript SDK. It saves us checking permissions already granted and prompting ourselves from our code. And it does make the JavaScript SDK slightly more convenient from the point of view of building the login and authorization process for our applications. Now you have a working framework for any JavaScript-based app which requires extended permissions. It's not much different to the basic sample. And again, the only difference really was the need to pass scope through to the login function, in this case FB login, and to retrieve the data returned from the response from that call. This code will now form the basis of our JavaScript examples from now on in other lessons in the course, and we'll see how to work with other Facebook data and JavaScript SDK functions as we move on.